I've like talked to people like one-on-one who like dealt with the bullying aspect of it, and they said it helps them because the major factor is isolation. People feel by themselves, so they isolate themselves and consume themselves in antisocial behavior. And I think more than just standing up for them on the internet is having a bond with them first.
Yeah. What do you think, Jake?
I honestly, I've seen it before, but I haven't been one to get really like involved in a resolution or causing it. I just kind of let it go by just to get by itself. I haven't really gotten involved in like cyberbullying before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to say I would, but in today's society, you know, it's kind of hard to do that the way people like judge you and stuff like that. So I'd say most people in this room probably have experienced it and seen it. They just don't fail to act.
Okay. Thanks.
My questioning will go a little bit different. Do you think video games have anything to do with these active shooters or shooting situations?
I personally believe they don't.
It's not helping the situation, but I don't think that's the reason it's being caused.
I actually wrote a speech on it a while ago, and the research I found said that it didn't cause any more violence, that it actually had more benefits because of like the more social interactions and everything. You can meet people, and like just the way it helps the brain and like hand-eye coordination, places like that. And I found out that people that play the games, like the only people that get affected are, you could say, the weak-minded or like the mentally ill, was the ones that like got damaged by the video games, with like shooter games, sports games, just games like that.
So you're saying that people who play those video games don't necessarily carry out acts like we're talking about?
And I remember whenever Grand Theft Auto 5 first came out, they thought there was going to be a huge spike in crime because of the game. But the normal people's morals are still there, preventing them from doing that. It's just a escape for them.
Wasn't there a mass shooting at a video game expo very recently? I think it was in
It was
Florida, wasn't it?
Coast, yeah.
Wasn't it one of the participants in that?
It was like a football tournament, yeah.
Madden tournament.
So it wasn't a first-person shooter game, but it was a gaming tournament.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
football tournament. He got mad, he lost, came back in, started firing. And they did research on it, and in the past they had found that he was already struggling with mental illness when this was.
So he had a history of mental illness that may have gone either undiagnosed or unappreciated. Interesting. Okay. Let's turn a little bit. We've talked a good bit about school shootings, about kind of this phenomenon that has been a fairly recently, if not just more advertised recent phenomenon of school shootings. Let's talk about prevention. I think I heard each of you say you weren't for arming teachers. Is that correct? Across the board, just want to make sure I had that correct. So if we're not for arming teachers, what do we do as an administrator in the school? One of my charges is to make sure that you guys are safe. Your teachers, their charge is to make sure that the students in their classroom are safe. What is it for us to do to make sure that you guys are safe in this school? Even if there's a very low likelihood, because we're a private school, because we're in an affluent area, because we're all these different things that don't necessarily put us high on the scale of an active shooter. What should we be doing to help protect you guys? What should be our preventative measures?
Well, I think you guys take a great step with the evil card swiping, because I think that's a great idea for just making sure what people are. And I know in Henry Clay and Dunbar, I think they have metal detectors just like in the doors. So when you walk in, it's just scanned. And I know wanding they do sometimes, but even just like stuff like that, it might not be cheap at all. It's definitely not cheap, but it's a system there to detect threats.
So metal detectors possibility, you think that'd be a good option here?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think we need people wanding. I think just because we are in a private school, I don't think we should be less easy with it. But I think something should still be there just in case.
I'm going to come back to that, Jake. Solve the problem for me. What do we do?
As he said, like the metal detectors, and where the gun was fired in Frederick Douglass past week ago, they added the metal detectors there, and I think that would be more of like a helpful idea, like just making sure nobody comes in with a weapon, firearm.
So add the metal detectors to keep firearms out?
Yes.
Okay. What about you, Brendan?
Like we have Officer Hart here, but like schools could like hire trained professional security guards for more cops on campuses, not just here but every public school. Like they said, metal detectors. You could train teachers a little bit to look for like maybe warning signs or ask questions to students. Bulletproof windows and stuff is an option too.
This is a very important subject to me, not just being an administrator at the school, but one of my charges is to work with Officer Hart to make sure that we implement any safety measures that he feels are necessary and prudent here. So we've talked about a lot of these things. Do you guys see a negative impact to having metal detectors at LCA? Can you give me some, because that's certainly come up a couple of times. What would be the negative consequences of instituting metal detectors here?
I believe that like a negative effect would be like, it would take longer to get inside the school.
Yes, it would.
And if there was like a shooter who was truly motivated to kill people, he could go just in the parking lots and shoot people before they get inside, truly.
You wouldn't wait in line to go through the metal detector?
Exactly.
Okay. What do you see as a negative of metal detectors, Brendan? I know I'm making you guys argue against yourself, and I love it, so go ahead.
I mean, I'd have to base off Jake. It's time consuming.
Time consuming.
Especially when you're trying to get to class and leave school. You know, people could come in late, and whether they'd have to go through their metal detectors or not is unknown, but people would come in late, and if they're really motivated, like Jake said, they could find a way to get it in the school without the metal detector.
So I'm going to give Jake time consuming. What else does it consume?
I'm not sure. Money,
Money consuming, isn't it?
especially.
Because you got to pay to get those in. You have to staff those, right? So we got to have somebody. Mr. Marshall now has to be out at the metal detector every morning, bonding everybody to make sure.
You'd have to hire more people.
We have to hire more people. Yep. What about you, Lincoln? Argue against metal detectors for me.
That's, the price is one thing, and I think that's a major reason why more anti-shooting systems have been instituted in schools is because the state government has to pay for it. And with them being so expensive, like this is bullet resistant panels. The starting price for one is $513. And they have to train all new people to staff those. It's a lot of money, even though it is the safety of the students that they're worried about. It's very hard to keep that price manageable.
And you said state government has to pay for it, right? Guess what private schools don't get?
State government.
State government. That's right. So the state government doesn't get to pay for it for us. So where does that money have to then come from?
Donations from the parents.
Or tuition dollars?
The school shootings that you all did investigate and look at, the perpetrators, the ones that carried out the shootings, what were the top causes? Like why? What was the top reasons for them carrying out the mass shootings?
There were a couple of top reasons, but the main one was mental illness. Many had a rough background at home and school, and many felt isolated or bullied.
And more than half of the shootings that we researched came directly after, very soon after they had switched schools. So it was maybe when it comes to bad home life, switching schools, so they isolated themselves. And they switched to a much larger school, which usually happens, so they went to a small to a very large public school. And just the isolation, the history of mental illness, which was mainly in it, and the isolation, I think are the major factors.
The school shooting is just a U.S. phenomenon?
No, although we didn't focus much this year on overseas.
Okay. Are you aware of any of it though?
School shootings, not as much. I know there's still like domestic acts of violence that happen a lot.
So let's shift a little bit. We talked about arming teachers. We talked about metal detectors to help prevent guns getting into the school. Would you guys be in favor of other non-lethal ways of addressing the school shooter? So we've talked about pepper spray canisters, OC spray, beanbag, tasers, different things like that. Would you guys be in favor of having something like that available? And if so, is it available to everybody? Is it just available to administrators? Is it just available to Officer Hart? Who would that be available to?
I think it should be paired along with legal force.
Okay.
But that I also think should be distributed a little bit more to teachers since it is non-lethal.
So just Mrs. Cat gets it?
Yeah. Tasers. No, I could definitely see like Coach Galloway carrying either like a mace or something like that, or even a taser.
Okay.
But Officer Hart, I think, should be the one who would eventually, in the end, has the legal force to.
Okay, so you're okay with non-lethal deterrence, we'll call them?
Yeah.
Okay, what about you, Jake? What do you think?
I believe that there shouldn't be something like, I guess you could miss with, I could say, like something smaller like pepper spray or something like that. But I believe like the more higher authorities could have like a taser or something, just in case, like say Officer Hart goes down or something, and there would still be some hope for saving people there.
Okay, so maybe like a pepper spray or a taser or something would be okay, and select individuals could carry it. What do you think, Brendan?
I agree. At this school particularly, I agree that Galloway, maybe Mr. Matthews, and certain teachers could have it, but I don't feel like it should be widespread to everyone in the school, like every staff member. I don't believe everyone should have it, and at public schools especially.
Do you think the students here generally feel safe?
Yes.
Just because of our environmental messages, and there is that connection, even if you feel like, you know, you're by yourself or isolated, it's still close enough where it would be hard to make a connection with a teacher or
Do you feel like people who may be struggling or maybe feeling depressed, or I don't know if you could see so much bullying at the high school level, but do you feel like they have people here that they were willing to go talk to?
yeah, I do. And I think it's different if they're trying to find help versus them having a mental breakdown and deciding to act violently on it. And I think there is people here who will help them with that if they're willing.
Got people like Coach Galloway, Mr. Ray, and just like the higher people up there you can talk to. And I feel like they wouldn't be ones to like go down on you, and they would like talk to you and get things worked out where you could be like a better mind state and like just have like or less violent train of thought.
I agree that with LCA in particular, you have everyone surrounding you, help you. It's a private school, smaller environment. You feel more connected, but especially at public schools is where you see the more of the isolation and the breakdowns.
Do you know if so mental health is a serious concern here. Do you know if the public schools are investing more in mental health evaluators or those that can help kind of diffuse, more counselors?
I know of a program here in Lexington called For Kids, and they provide more counselors in the school day without having to be on exact payroll because it's more volunteer basis, and they do after-school programs that help with tutoring and not only just tutoring but just sharing, just being like friends with the kids.
To kind of switch it up a little bit, but still on the line of safety and stuff, put yourself in the mind of a shooter. What would actually deter you from not coming into a school?
Knowing that they could stop you, like they had the resources to stop.
Like what?
Like officer having a gun.
Just one?
Well, not even him. If the non-lethal was instituted, because a taser can take you down just as easily as a gun. And you're not going to be able to just walk off the taser.
True, but I mean, it only has a certain reach, right?
Yeah, that's true. I think if I was like, that would be the main deterrent, even if it was just one person. Although if they're going into it with the mindset, that might not affect them as much. But me still, like being sane, I think that would deter them.
Good.
I think it determines the student or the person. Like if it's a person that has relationships with their teachers and other students, I don't think they would exactly. They could have second thoughts about like if they hurt their friends, they wouldn't feel too good about that. Or if they hurt someone they know someone loves, then I don't think they would exactly like. It depends the person. Like.
True, but most of the time we'll just say that they probably aren't thinking that way.
Yeah.
So if they aren't, what would be ways that you might second guess your thought, your action that you're about to do? What things would the school need to do to potentially prevent this?
I know they would think of the consequences they would have.
Right.
Not too sure.
I like if they're going in the mindset of knowing you're not going to come out. I feel like then nothing will really stop them.
Somebody mentioned earlier what the percentage of these school shootings where the shooter, the perpetrator survives the shooting or does not. Do you guys have some numbers on that?
Most of the time, the shooter does survive, but the ones where there is a suicide, the casualty rates are exponentially higher. And if there's more than one shooter, 100% of the time they both commit suicide.
They both
Ones
what?
we researched. If there's more than one shooter
Yeah.
active, they both commit suicide.
Oh.
On the ones we researched.
100%. Wow.
How often do you have more than one shooter? I can think of maybe one that you mentioned earlier, but I can't think of too many where we had multiple active shooters.
On this one, there's 15 and only 2 had multiple shooters.
Okay.
It's rare, but it's
Yeah.
an option.
I mean, certainly Columbine, I can think of, but I can't think of another one. Also, what's the demographic of these shooters usually? Talk to me about gender, age, socioeconomic. Do we know anything about? I don't know, you're painting with a broad brush, but let's talk about the majority.
I know a high percentage of the shooters are usually male, and I know a pretty good amount are usually white too.
79% of all the shooters are white. The large cities actually have lower rates of fatal shootings than rural areas do, and which kind of surprised me at first. And
Fatal shootings in schools.
yeah, because with the large cities, the way they classify, because gang violence with multiple people is not considered a school shooting.
So that's excluded from the
That's
numbers.
excluded, in which I think kind of skews the number. But if you take away all like the gang violence and all that, if it's just an isolated 1 or 2 people going in, that's why the rural area is higher, because there's probably not as active gang activity like Purdue.
I would argue with your 70-some odd % of the shooters are male. I think almost 100%.
yeah.
If it's not 100%, I can't think of one that we had a female shooter.
There's been one.
Has there been one?
And there was not.
Since
It was non-fa- yeah.
1966, there's only been 3 that were not men.
So maybe we should just metal detect the male students coming into school? I mean, it makes sense, right?
Do you know what type of weapons they were using?
I know on most of these that we researched, they had multiple weapons with them. Not only-
Multiple types of weapons?
Multiple, yes. Usually handguns were ended up using those all the time. But there were some found with the larger weapons they found, they were usually stolen from family members, as I said.
AR-15s are usually a common weapon.
Yeah, that was, in the more modern times, it's assault rifles that they use.
Well, I was just thinking, if you're using the bigger weapons, whether you felt like you're going to go to the extreme of harming a teacher, whether that would be enough.
I mean, that's about as good as we get. I mean, unless you want to harm teachers with assault rifles.
No, I'm just suggesting, I mean, if you're weighing the pros and cons of taking that extreme measure, should you consider whether it would be an effective deterrent or at least an effective
Because if they
defense?
know how to use the gun, it doesn't matter if you use that as a good, they're going to use it against you.
Yeah, so like if they're trained and well in a situation, they can defend as much as they can with what they have.
Let me shift this just a little bit. One discussion that we've had, and certainly as Officer Hart has talked with you guys about things to be concerned about in school. He's also talked with the administration about things that we can do and how we can address different situations, whether they're social situations or situations like this, security situations. Would it be right for the school to put expectations on our teachers to address an active shooter in any way, whether that's with a firearm, with an OC spray or a taser, or just with a staple? Is it right for me to tell Mrs. Eiler, I hired you to teach these classes, but I also need you, by the way, to go address an active shooter if they come by your classroom? What do you think, Brandon?
I don't think it's right. I feel like they were hired to teach and educate, not to be in an active shooter situation.
So you don't feel like I can put that demand on Mrs. Eiler as part of our teaching core? Okay, what do you think, Jake?
I think that only if the shooter comes in your classroom, that you should be able to like have the responsibility to do something about the shooter. Because if he's like in the other side of the school, I don't think you should be able to say to a teacher to go over there and try to stop him over there, when you should be in the classroom protecting your students from any, if in case he comes in here.
So Mrs. Eiler's then first mission should be to protect the students that she has, not necessarily go
Yes.
address whatever the threat is.